You're still alive? I'm happy, got grandkids now. My dad said, laughing coarsely as he looked at my mom. After abandoning us, he had married his mistress. They had a son, and recently even a grandchild. He proudly introduced his family. Then started bragging about how great his life has been since leaving mom. In contrast, you're stuck here in this shabby inn, scraping by with part-time work. What a miserable life, he said in his usual mocking tone. It's been a while, I said, glaring at him. He looked surprised. Hannah, is that you? Great to see both of you slumming it together in this dump. You must have racked up debt for medical bills, huh? Tough to pay it all back. My dad, drunk, rambled on with his wild assumptions. When I was about to snap back, my mom calmly stopped me. Hannah, no. Remember, he's still a guest. What are you whispering about over there? Dad jeered, but mom just faced forward, unwavering, and announced, I'll introduce you to our 17-year-old business and family. What? Dad said, dumbfounded. Then mom shared facts that left him speechless. My name is Hannah Smith. Recently turned 20. Most my age are still students, but I've been working already. Every day, I'm up at 5 a.m., heading to work. I work at an inn named Petit Auberge. Bustling especially now during peak season. After taking over the night shift, I quickly start my morning tasks. Soon, my mom, Chloe, arrives. How's today? Busy, but I'm managing, I replied with a smile. Mom works here too. Avoiding long hours due to a past serious illness. Working here with her, helping her, makes me happiest. As noon approaches, more guests check in. I took my place at the reception, handling one family after another. That family looks so close. Watching them, I feel a pang in my heart. I don't have a father. My parents divorced when I was just a kid. I barely remember my dad. But I know about him from the stories my mom and grandparents told. He was a terrible man. And what he did to our family is unforgivable. It happened when I was little. I lived with my dad and my frail mom. Mom's health wasn't great since my birth, spending a lot of time bedridden. I'm sorry, Hannah. I can't be the mom I want to be. I remember that clearly. Her condition worsened over time. It was an incurable disease back then, with a grim prognosis. When I turned 3, she was given the terminal diagnosis. Can't help it, you know your own body best. Mom, a former nurse. She seemed prepared for the worst, having seen others with the same disease. My dad, meanwhile, simply abandoned her. Turns out, he had a mistress. Mom didn't talk much about it, but my grandparents filled me in. Dad started hitting the town at night, venting his stress. And found a favorite lady at a bar. He left mom for her. The divorce was quietly settled without my knowledge. The day Dad left our home, I clung to him, not wanting to let go. Maybe I sensed something, even as a child. But he harshly pulled away, yelling, "You're in the way!" I burst into tears. Hannah, I'm not your dad anymore. Just huddle up in this depressing house with her, he said with a sneer. That's terrible. How could you say that to Hannah? Mom hugged me, protecting me. Then Dad, with a devilish look, spat out. I'm tired of taking care of you. I want to be free. Don't take it hard, if you're gonna blame anyone, blame your illness. Without looking back, he quickly left the house. Mom held me tight, motionless. We were crying quietly. It's a terrible story. Now, I'd spit in my father's face for sure. But back then, being only 3, what could I do? My mom and I were at a loss. Eventually, we moved in with my mom's parents. It was tough for my ailing mom and me, just shy of 3 years old, to manage on our own. Thankfully, my grandparents took over caring for my mom and looking after me. I'm forever grateful. But mom's condition remained the same. The only hope for recovery was through the latest treatment. But it was expensive. My grandparents, living on their pension, couldn't afford it. If only we had some savings. Didn't you have any? There are family savings, but that's for Hannah's education. This conversation repeated often. I sort of understood that mom didn't want to use the money for herself, thinking of me. Finally, I couldn't hold back any longer. Mom, I'm fine. Use it for your treatment. When I grow up, I'll take care of myself. More than anything, I want you to get better, I said, crying. Mom initially refused, but after much persuasion from me and my grandparents, she agreed to use the savings. School didn't matter. As long as Mom got better, that was enough. Money, we could figure out. I think I said something like that. So my grandmother went to withdraw the money from the family account on behalf of my bedridden mom. But we faced an unforeseen crisis. The family savings my mom had slowly accumulated were completely gone. The only other person who knew the account's PIN was my father. It seemed clear that Dad had withdrawn the money. We were devastated. Just when we saw a glimmer of hope, Dad's actions once again stole our future. Even if we wanted to get the money back, Dad had disappeared with his mistress, and we didn't know how to contact him. We filed a police report, but his whereabouts remained unknown. What were we supposed to do? Everyone was racking their brains when a man contacted my mom. He claimed to be an acquaintance of hers. He had been in a serious accident and was hospitalized at the hospital where Mom used to work as a nurse. It was a severe accident, and he suffered significant after effects. He had become deeply depressed for a while. Amidst all this, a man was able to recover thanks to my mother's earnest encouragement. After regaining his hope for life, he started a business. His business took off, and he achieved social success. He kept in touch with my mother, even after her discharge from the hospital, updating her about his life about once a year. When he heard about my mother's condition, he insisted on paying for her treatment. We were surprised. My mother refuses, saying she is sorry. But the man was adamant. I recovered because of Chloe. I want to repay her kindness, he said. Still, Mom stubbornly refused. But the man persisted, saying, if so, instead of just giving the treatment money, there's something I'd like you to do. Hearing his request, Mom hesitated. She was wondering if she could do it. But he assured her. You can do it. With that, Mom decided to accept his offer. This was a bolt from the blue for us. Mom, who we thought had no more options, was able to receive treatment. There was nothing happier than this. But of course, it wasn't an immediate recovery. It took time to get back to her normal health. Taking lots of medication and visiting the hospital for years. Eventually, Mom recovered enough to lead a normal life again. We were immensely grateful to the man. Later, we cooperated to fulfill the man's request. I suddenly snapped back to reality, remembering all this. I needed to focus on my work. With that thought, I briskly continued with my work. After guiding a group of guests, I took a breather. This is a famous inn, right? Seems more modest than I expected, doesn't it? Hey, I thought this would be a more luxurious inn. Well, maybe it's valuable to poor people, isn't it? That's when a brash man and woman appeared. They looked to be in their 40s, with several children trailing behind them. Seemingly a family. Nothing out of the ordinary. But their crude way of speaking was somewhat displeasing. I began the check-in process, asking the man for his name. Omar. Joseph Omar. He answered curtly. The moment I heard that name, I felt chills run down my spine. Joseph Omar? That's my father's name. The man who left my mom and me and hasn't seen us in 17 years. I never expected a reunion here. And the woman next to him must be his mistress. Probably his new wife by now. Her name's Mirabelle, I think. The sulky young boy behind them must be their son. Looking so much like my father. Then a girl, carrying a baby, followed. Maybe siblings? A family of 5. There's no doubt. My father is here on vacation with his new family. He is unaware of my presence. No surprise there. It's been 17 years since we last met. I was only 3 then, now all grown up. Dad, leaning on the counter, casually asked. Hey, when's food gonna be served? I want to eat right away. Unfortunately, we have a fixed schedule, and your meal will be served in your room at noon. That's lame. Can't you make an exception? Other fancy inns cater to their guests, you know? Sorry, we have a lot of group guests today, so we can't serve any earlier. Mirabelle then chimed in. What a stingy inn. Fine, whatever. I'll just write about the poor service online. It's your loss if you ignore your guests. She laughed loudly. I maintained a forced smile, feeling utterly fed up inside. Such crass people. Unchanged since the days. He callously abandoned my sick mom and me as a child. I handed them their room key and discreetly sighed. Later, while working on the computer in the office, my mom came in. I hesitated to tell her about Dad. But there was no use hiding it. Mom, actually. Dad came earlier, with his new family. What? She looked surprised. I briefly told her about the encounter. So, he's still the same. I'm gonna greet Dad's family in their room, but you don't have to come, Mom. You don't want to see him, right? After a moment, she firmly said. No, I'll go too. But. It's okay. I'm fine. Mom had a determined look on her face. As if she had a plan. Together, we went to greet my father and his family in their room. Excuse us, I said as we opened the door. Dad and his family were already drinking beer, completely drunk. You're late. Bring the food now, he yelled immediately. I was about to retort, but Mom stopped me with a hand gesture and said with a smile. Welcome to Petit Auberts. My name is Chloe. It's nice to see such a happy family. Huh? You are? Dad, who had been focused on his drink, finally noticed us. A look of surprise spreading across his face. But then he burst into loud laughter. Still alive, huh? I've got grandkids now and I'm happy. Dad laughed coarsely. He introduced his family. With Mirabelle, he had a son, Harry, who was already married to the girl beside him. Her name was Mary. They were both only 18. It seems Harry and Mary were high school classmates. They married after she got pregnant, as Dad proudly explained. Mary was holding their baby, a grandson to my father. He named Sam. Dad continued, bragging about his great life since leaving Mom. In contrast, you're stuck here in this shabby inn, living a part-time life. What a miserable existence. He slurred, his wild fantasies unchecked by the alcohol. I couldn't help but speak up. It's been a while. I glared at him, and he looked surprised. Hannah? Well, this is good. The two of you slumming it together in this dump. Probably got into debt for medical bills, huh? Must be hard paying it all back. My father laughs gleefully. Mirabelle joined the conversation. Oh, if it isn't Joseph's ex-wife and her graceless daughter. She laughed along with Dad. Poor thing, must be tough being poor. Well, we have enough money to travel around. Poor people can't afford that, can they? She said, laughing. Despite reminding myself they were still guests, I struggled to contain my anger. I was about to snap back when Mom calmly intervened. Hannah, no. Remember, they are guests after all. Mom calmly stopped me. Hey, what are you whispering about over there? Dad jeered, but Mom ignored him and faced forward. Then declared. I'll introduce you to my 17-year-old company and my daughter's family. What? This inn is mine. I'm the owner and manager. We have an annual turnover of $200 million. We've come this far thanks to my daughter's family and others. Oh. What? Yes, Mom started this inn. She's the owner and the manager. And by the way, I'm also an executive. The man who paid for Mom's treatment owned real estate. That was this land. He didn't want to part with it. But it would be a shame to let it lie there. So, he asked Mom, reluctant to take the treatment money, to make use of this land however she could once she recovered. And then, my mother was able to receive treatment and successfully recovered. After that, Mom decided to start an inn here. Of course, it was a series of hardships at first. We started as a small guest house, struggling with management. After much effort, we finally grew it into a respectable inn. It's well regarded and popular, often featured in the media. During peak season, people come from far and wide. We were living busy but fulfilling lives. Mom declared proudly. And this is my new family. My daughter Hannah, an executive, and, hey, come here. She called to a man in work clothes walking down the hall. Did you call me, Chloe? This is Ken, our executive vice president. Ken is Hannah's husband. Nice to meet you. Ken greeted my father, slightly confused. I had just recently married Ken. He is 3 years older at 23. He was a business student, impressed by Mom's story in a local newspaper. He was researching management of small to medium-sized businesses and came to interview us at Petit Aubert's. After graduating, he decided to work here. His effective management strategies have made Petit Aubert's even more famous. Ken, with his earnest work and genuine personality, won over the staff. Of course, I was one of them. I confessed my feelings, and Ken reciprocated. We got engaged and recently married. Dad and his family were speechless, mouths agape. It made sense. They had mocked us for being poor, never imagining we were the owners. Eventually, Dad's hands, holding a beer can, started to tremble, perhaps overwhelmed with regret. Dad tried to retort, glaring at us, but seemed lost for words. "Hey, why are you silent, Joseph?" Mirabelle prodded him. But Dad, perhaps sobered up by now, remained silent. "I'm just as happy as you are. I have a wonderful family and a proud inn, with always lovely guests. Compared to that, indulging in luxuries seems like a trivial distraction," Mom said with a full smile. Mirabelle could only grind her teeth in response. I followed Mom's lead, smiling confidently and said, "Please enjoy your stay." Back in the office, Mom said nonchalantly, "You have to be direct with people like them, or they'll get carried away." "That's true." I nodded. But they were beyond what we imagined. That night, other guests started to complain. Apparently, there was a fight breaking out between two men in the hallway. Harry, my father's son, was fighting with another male guest in the corridor. It seemed Harry, busy with his phone, bumped into the guest. And instead of apologizing, he picked a fight. Ken intervened just in time to prevent it from escalating. But it didn't end there. Mary, Harry's wife, left the baby's diapers lying around. It led to more complaints. They even tried to take away food from the buffet in containers, ignoring our warnings. It was unbelievable. Such a lack of common sense. And even as night fell, their rowdiness showed no signs of subsiding. And they didn't quiet down at night, keeping nearby guests awake with their noise. What kind of people were they? We had no choice. We made a decision. We decided to cancel their stay from the next day. They were guests, but that didn't mean they could do whatever they wanted. We had an obligation to protect our other guests. Ken said, "I'll go tell them. It might cause trouble if a woman says it, so I'll handle it." But even Ken couldn't manage it. Ken whispered to me in a low voice, "Sorry, they won't listen. They're insisting on speaking to the manager and making a fuss." Mom hadn't arrived for work yet. I had no choice but to handle it. "I apologize, but we also have the right to protect our other guests. Could you please leave?" I said as politely as I could, but it was clear they weren't convinced. Dad and Mirabelle were whispering to each other. Then suddenly burst into smirks. I had a bad feeling. "If you insist, we'll leave. But in exchange, make our stay free." "What?" "Yeah, right. We plan to stay a week, but you're kicking us out after one night because of your own reasons. And you still want to charge us? We should be asking for compensation." I was stunned by his outrageous claim. Mirabelle quickly backed him up. "Exactly. You're the owners, but ultimately, it's a customer-based business. The customer is always right, isn't it? If you don't comply, we'll spread how terrible this inn is all over the internet. Right, Harry?" Mirabelle turned to Harry. Harry, smugly pulling out his smartphone, said, "That's right, Mom. I'll record this in and spread it around. The worst in that ignores its guests' requests." Harry started filming the reception and our faces without permission. "Hey, stop that. This could ruin our business." I panicked. Just then, Mom arrived and yelled as she came to the counter. "Hannah! I've called the police." "Thank you, Mom." It seemed the only way to handle such selfish people was this. "Damn," Dad said at the mention of the police. And tried to flee. But it was too late. Ken and other employees rushed out and restrained Dad's family. "What are you doing?" "Let go," Dad yelled as he was pinned to the floor. I looked down at him coldly. "You're despicable. I never thought you could be so pathetic. A complete fool." He was no longer a father to me, not even a guest. I spoke my mind.
What did you say, Hannah? To your own father? Father? I've never once thought of you as a father. You're nothing but a scoundrel.
Dad mumbled something in response. Soon, the police arrived. They escorted Dad's family away. As they were leaving, Mom, who had been calm until now, shouted something.
I'm the owner of this inn. I won't tolerate anyone who unfairly defames it. Just disappear.
Mom shouted as Dad's family, with bitter faces, was pushed into the police car and taken away.
Mom, that was loud. I didn't know you could raise your voice like that.
Mom responded calmly. Of course. I couldn't just stay quiet after being insulted like that. And then returned to her usual serene expression. That's just like Chloe, as grandfather always told me. Ken remarked casually. Something about that struck me. Wait, grandfather. Ken looked as if he'd slipped up, but quickly regained his composure and started explaining. Actually, a long time ago, when my grandfather was hospitalized, she helped him. So, I grew up hearing about her. He always said she was an incredible person who gave him hope. That's why I was always curious, and the reason why I came to Petit Aubaird's for an interview when I was a student. Wait, your grandfather is? Ken then mentioned his grandfather's name. No doubt about it. It was the name of the benefactor who paid for Mom's treatment.
No way. Why didn't you tell us?
Mom was visibly shaken. Ken replied slowly. My grandpa didn't like imposing his kindness on others. He always said not to talk much about it. So, it was like that. The benefactor was Ken's grandfather. I couldn't hide my surprise. The very person saved by Mom's dedicated nursing years ago. It was a strange twist of fate, how connections between people work. I thought that. After that, Dad and his family were quickly arrested. They had been trying to swindle other inns too, seeking discounts on their stays. They were marked by the police as suspicious individuals. Additionally, there were other charges against him as well. Surprisingly, Dad had been embezzling money from his company and fleeing. They had a habit of wasteful spending. They loved to wear brand-name items and luxury. It seemed to stem from Mirabelle's influence. It was likely her idea to take our family's savings. To satisfy her demands, Dad embezzled company funds. He was the sole person in charge of the accounts, and had managed to hide it until recently. But recently, audits started at the company. Fearing the investigation reaching him, Dad quickly resigned from his company and left home with his family. Their trip was a complete lie. They had been moving from place to place, dodging bills for food and lodging. Dad was being sued by his previous company, the inns and restaurants they had stayed at. Of course, as Mirabelle, Harry, and Mary had also participated in the freeloading, they were arrested too. Dad's family ended up behind bars together. Except for the baby Sam, who was apparently left with Mirabelle's parents. The family was torn apart, but it was their own doing. It's a pitiful end for people drowned in greed. Now, they have plenty of time to reflect on their crimes behind cold iron bars. Months have passed since then. I'm living my days as usual. Well, with one change. You should head up now. I'll take over the rest of the work. Don't overdo it, it's not good for your health. Ken says with a gentle smile. I nod in agreement. I'm pregnant. I'm going to be a grandmother soon. Time flies. Mom says with a laugh. Next year, I'll be a mother myself. It's still unreal to me. But I'm determined about one thing. I won't let my child go through the hardships I faced. I won't let them experience such pain. I used to envy families that got along well. A kind father to spoil me, or being a little rebellious at times. I was dreamed like that. But my reality only had such a father. If that's the case, I reject it. Meeting Dad again made me realize people don't change that easily. Some connections are better cut off. Dad has completely vanished from my life now. No more pain seeing happy families. I have my own family now. Mom, Ken, and our soon-to-arrive baby. I'll cherish them. And live on in our precious home, Petit Aubaird's.